Welcome. I'm Kimberly Henrie, and this is Living the Good Life. Thanks for joining me for episode 2 of our brand new podcast. This week, I encourage you to fasten your seatbelt as we take off on a conversation with one of the voiceover industry's finest, Jon Bailey. December 18th marks the national holiday of Answer Your Phone Like Buddy the Elf Day. That sparked my imagination right away. Having spent so much time around creative radio and voiceover talent over the last 20 years or so, I've always been in awe of people who can do impersonations with ease. I think it's just so much fun, and I've always secretly wanted to learn to do it myself. This seemed a perfect opportunity. So thanks to my great voiceover friend Al Kessel, Jon and I connected, and he agreed to walk us through his process a little bit. This became a bit of a one-sided conversation as Jon easily transitioned to Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chris Pratt, Owen Wilson, Jeff Bridges, Winnie-the-Pooh, Sam Elliott, and of course, Will Ferrell as Buddy the Elf. Along the way, he talks about how he started this unique career path, shares his philosophy on not waiting for the door to open. I think that's a really important tip. And how being competitive with his mom spurred him on to his first impersonations of Yoda and Grover as a kid. So sit with me as we both listen to Jon Bailey of epicvoiceguy.com. How long have you been doing this, Jon?
I started in when did I start again? 2009, I guess. Yeah, because next year will be my 10th year. I guess I wasn't in the double digits just yet. So yeah, 2009, and I think February 11th was my first professional gig. Coming up.
Fantastic. So you've really gone after it.
Yeah, I don't like to sit still. I'm a very big fan of just, if you see what you want, you just stink and dive in head first and go after it, and whatever happens, you know.
How did you find yourself in the industry?
It was an accident. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. My wife made a MySpace page. I was not a fan of social networking or social media. I thought it was stupid. It would never last. I'm so glad I did not invest with Facebook when I had the chance. That's a joke. Anyway, so there was a pop-up ad. That was back before pop-up ads were blocked, and it had a local studio, and we were from Memphis. Yeah. We knew there was plenty of things for music there and crime, and I'm not interested in either one of those things. And but it was a voiceover studio in that area. It was like maybe 10, 15 minutes away from us, and she was like, look, they says they're looking for talent, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's just a stupid pipe dream. That's never. She's like, the worst they can do is say no. What do you got to lose? I'm like, huh. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Awesome.
So yeah, I tried out. I kind of floored them, and they started sending me stuff February 1st of 2009, and by February 11th, I already booked my first gig. Based on a demo that I actually had written a script for myself, because they're like, we don't really have scripts that can show off what you can do. I'm like, well, I can write some stuff for you. So this fake ad I did for a fake restaurant called O'Grady's ended up booking me a whole bunch of stuff for a restaurant chain called Texas Steakhouse on the East Coast. That was my first professional gig. And even at non-union rates, I was blown away by how much money it was. I was like, man, I could have been doing this all this time.
Right. Well, that's a really unusual way to jump in.
Yeah, I saw a window open, so I just jumped in there. I don't have to wait for the door to open. You just find a hole somewhere.
Have impersonations always been something that you've done even before?
Yeah, I was a very competitive kid. I like to win. And my mom, I forget how this conversation came about. When I was like 4 years old, my mom was like, I can do the voice of Grover. And I was like, I can do that too. You know, but I can do it better than you can. And later on, she was like, I can do the voice of Yoda too. And I'm like, Yoda's just a dyslexic Grover. It's the same guy.
What? I can't wait for you to teach us a little bit of your ways, because I've been doing voiceover longer than you have. But impersonations is one thing that is never come natural for me. I can create a character for an audiobook or for a commercial, but to do an impersonation just doesn't. Well, there's just a piece missing in my brain.
There's a bit of a divide, because comedians have been doing impressions for a very long time, and if you have to break it down to try to explain it, It's like going to the fair and finding the guy who paints the pictures, the caricature pictures, because that's more of an impression. An impression is an exaggeration of the original voice. It's usually meant to be funny on purpose. It doesn't always have to be a perfect sound-alike. In my line of work, which is mostly ADR, when you can debate all you want to about what the letters stand for me, it stands for audio dialogue replacement, because that's literally what it is. I know it stands for automated digital whatever, but it's not automated at all. There's nothing automatic about replacing dialogue.
Right. Right.
It has to be a spot-on impression. And the one that I try to stay away from voices that everybody thinks they can do, because it's like, oh, I can do that better than you. I'm like, okay, whatever. But the one that I use for example when I'm teaching is Arnold Schwarzenegger, because a lot of comedians do Arnie. And they do they're ridiculous of it. But if you want to do the real voice of Arnold, you have to do it down here where it sounds real,
Oh.
So that way they can't even, the point is for them not to be able to tell that it's not him. So that's just like the difference between an impression and a sound alike. So you have to sound as much like, they usually send you an audio reference, and if they don't, you might be unlucky enough to get like a YouTube clip of them being interviewed on late night. And I'm like, this is not going to help me at all. They're not going to be playing themselves in this movie or this show. They're going to be playing a character.
Right.
So you need to hear what they sound like. And I've lost a few jobs that way because they didn't have a good reference for it yet. Because I was like, well, I don't know what they sound like in the movie. What kind of character? How are they playing this character? They're not being themselves. So that's the main thing. Having a very good ear also has a big chunk to do with it. So when you can hear the unique qualities of a voice and you can replicate those qualities, that's what you're really going after. So the more normal a voice is, the harder it is to sound like it. A few times I've booked ones that I thought they were just impossible to get, because Chris Pratt was one. I never thought I'd book that one because Chris Pratt has a fairly normal voice. And I was just like, it was, and in my line of work, it's never like, oh, you don't have days to prepare. You don't have tons of time to watch movies and get a good feel for the characters. They give you like 15 minutes or an hour. And you're like, oh, okay. And they give you 1 5-second, maybe 3-second clip to go from. And sometimes it's been Frankenstein together so badly, it's like really hard. And sometimes you'll see a trailer where they actually, instead of getting a sound alike to make it sound smooth, they just use the audio from the movie and then they Frankenstein it together, and it just sounds awful. It sounds like Siri used to sound, like very robotic and like super edited. And it's like, oh, that's just terrible. So Chris Pratt was one where I was like, his voice is so stinking normal. How in the world am I supposed to sound like that? So I just reverse engineered it. I started listening to it, and I noticed, like, I just close my eyes and listen. And then I just kind of do back what I hear, and I record myself and then listen back to it myself, because we don't know what we sound like until we record it and listen back to it. And I noticed that it had a very Owen Wilson kind of sound to it. So it had very kind of, wow, it's like, the speed, I am speed. And I just kind of toned it down a little bit, gave it a little bit of gravel and a little bit of a Southern accent. All of a sudden, there you go. It's Chris Pratt. And they were like, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, okay. Because I never really know. Same thing with Jeff Bridges. I was like, holy crap, Jeff Bridges' voice. Geez, that's hard. But luckily for me, he's been doing the same cowboy character for like 20 movies. And so I listened to it, and I did the same thing. I reverse engineered it, and I was like, man, it sounds like Frank Caliendo's, like a bad Frank Caliendo impression of John Madden. So you start here with a boom. I got the ace of the place for hardware. Brett Favre's best football player ever. Ace of the place for hardware. And I started there, and then I added a cowboy accent to it, and just kind of softened it out, man. And all of a sudden, there I am looking for my rug with my Energizer batteries or whatever it is he sells. And they were like, there you go. And I booked him for like 3 movies. So you just never really know. Sometimes it's just a thing where it's a favorite voice or character. And I love the voice so much, I'll just practice it forever. Like Winnie-the-Pooh, I've booked his ADR most often. Even though Jim Cummings is a wonderful man, he's often too busy to do these kinds of things. So I'll just, do the scratch, and Jim will come in and do it later on. But stuff like that, it's just like, I love Winnie-the-Pooh. So I'm just going to keep trying until I get it. Kind of awesome.
It's just like hanging out with all these guys.
I've actually heard that before when I was actually in the middle of a session. And it was a local Dodge Ram car salesman that they couldn't afford to get Sam Elliott, but they wanted it to sound like the big national commercials. So I went in there and did my thing, man. And they were like, can you use one voice the whole time? Because we keep thinking there's 2 people.
Oh, Sam Elliott. Woo. Okay, so can we?
He's a bit of a hero.
Yes, he is. I just watched that this weekend.
Oh,
The
that's a
Hero.
great movie. I love
It's
it.
a great movie. Let's boil it down to Buddy the Elf. How do we break that down? Because that's what's coming up. And everybody wants to participate.
Well,
So,
Buddy the Elf has a very childlike demeanor. If you didn't know, Jim Carrey turned down that role to do the Grinch because it had been pushed for like 10 years, and he finally got fed up with waiting for it, and he's like, fine, I'm not going to do this anymore. So Will Ferrell, it kind of fell into Will Ferrell's lap,
wow.
which he's kind of perfect for because he's a ginormous person. I mean, he's the total opposite of an elf, which is why it's so funny.
Yes.
He's ridiculously
Hilarious.
tall. And he's got a dad bod, which is it's just hilarious to see this gigantic person next to these tiny little, these mythical creatures or whatever.
Right.
So you just have to have a very childlike quality, and you do like it's almost like Jason Bateman's voice if you took all that extra air out of it. And I've only ever filled in for Will Ferrell for Lego Movie 2, not Lego Movie 1, some stuff for Lego Movie, and the second Ron Burgundy movie. But he has multiple voices that he can do. Being a comedian that makes them especially being good at improvisation. They're very versatile when it comes to that. So even though they're one guy, I mean, President Business is a totally different character, as is Ron Burgundy. I mean, it's the same guy, but he's got that, that quality in the back of his throat. But, he doesn't do that for Buddy the Elf. He's very kind and gentle. And he's just, it's almost like he's doing a Mark Wahlberg impersonation without the accent. Hey, you guys, what's going on right now? I'm Buddy the Elf, okay? I'm going to work on these barbells.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So, yeah, it's just a very soft, childlike voice.
Jon, thank you so much for sharing your talent and being with us today.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Jon Bailey, epicvoiceguy.com.
Remember to shed Christmas cheer all through the year.
Part of living the good life is embracing the childlike wonder of all the cool things we can do, whether it's with our voice, other talents, training our bodies, or through the kindnesses to one another, especially at this time of year when the childlike spirit surrounds us. If you look at everything through the eyes of a child in your life, it takes on a whole different meaning. For example, this past weekend, the grandkids were playing on a little sled hill I built for them in our yard. I had a blast watching them. But you know what was even more fun? When my granddaughter convinced me to give it a go. I really didn't think I'd get much out of it, except to look like a giant dork. I actually thought I might shoot past the barricade right down into the bushes. But she was persistent, and a little part of me wanted to play too. I have to admit that. So I did grab a saucer and headed up the hill. I squealed on the way down and giggled like a little girl. That is the kind of joy I need in my life, and that is the kind of playfulness I hope to inspire in you throughout this podcast series. I hope you'll try out your Buddy the Elf voice and give into some fun activity that your inner child wants to do. We can be successful and productive and professional and joyful. Life is so abundantly good. Let's get out there and live it. Have a great day.